Welcome to this lunchtime webinar on the changing role of learning and development, presented to you by ReadLearning. Just to point out, you can't actually interact with us vocally, but if you've got any questions, then please type them into the chat box at the bottom, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Can I just remind everybody to press *6, and that will mute your line, so that we don't get too much interruptions throughout the session. Thank you very much. Okay, so first of all, I'd like to talk to you about who we are. In front of you, you should have some slides which will show you. Me, first of all, I'm Ben Waldman. I'm Head of Learning here at ReadLearning. And then in the middle, we've got Neville Pritchard, who is a member of our academic board here at ReadLearning. And also, he's hugely experienced in L&D. He's headed up L&D at Barclays and Abbey, and it's a great pleasure to have you both with me today. Yeah. It's a pleasure. So, just to take you through what we're going to be discussing this afternoon. First of all, we're going to have a little look at trends and challenges in L&D, and I'll take you through the research that we're using for that in a second. I'm then going to get Neville and Emma's input. There will be a bit of time for Q&A. And the research that we use. So first of all, the ASTD was done by our good friends at Good Practice, by us at ReadLearning, and an interesting quote to start us off. Report quote. On these projects, but
it makes very little difference at all. Everybody has one. It's the uniqueness of that strategy that matters. The same
of research. So first of all, strategic contributor has improved. And lastly, 67% believe their status as a key strategic component will be better over the next 6 months. That's ASTD, and that's a 9% increase from 2010. So the research seems to show that learning is becoming part of a strategy, a way of achieving a new level of performance to reach those organisational goals. Neville.
I think it's interesting because the challenge for L&D is that although learning is becoming part of the strategy, L&D in a number of cases is still very transactional. In the Good Practice report, it picked up the fact that L&D is very much focused on supporting immediate work priorities to support the challenges brought on by recession. The intent is there, but with the recession and the sort of reactionary moves to cut I'm not quite sure what happened there.
It's just been run over.
Are we learning webinar?
The CIPD percentages are interesting. I think what it flags up is in other research we've picked up, particularly in award entries, that there are three types of organisation. There's a tick box organisation in terms of L&D. There's a mixed organisation. There's a fully integrated organisation. The best winners at the ASTD Awards, which I've judged for the past 6 years, are always aligned, integrated, cost efficient, and they can show how effective they are to organisational performance. How they do that is unique to their own organisation, and so they're using very different approaches in each organisation.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you, Neville. So the research seems to show that the intent is there. I guess my question around that would be, is it actually happening in reality? Because L&D is largely reactionary in lots of organisations. But we can pick up on that in a second. Secondly, nearly half of organisations anticipate a greater integration between coaching, OD and performance management. That's a CIPD quote there from CIPD result. Lastly, and I think it's interesting to look at talent development. That lovely umbrella term, talent management, is on the increase. Often, it's not effective. Looking at the reports, when it is effective, it's things like line manager coaching schemes, it's things like in-house development programs, 360-degree feedback, secondments. And anecdotally, that's something that we've noticed much more interest in from our clients here at Reed Learning. Lots of program-led work to support talent activity using things like our own 360-degree model. So, on the face of it, it seems pretty simple. Align learning and development strategy with organisational strategy, and you're away. I guess that's pretty much it, isn't it, Neville?
It seems that way. It seems that way. I mean, again, it comes down to, what are an organisation using learning and development for? When we were looking at the award entries for ASTD, we spotted really that the tick box organisations were really providing what I would call off-the-shelf learning, where it was a sort of mixed use of L&D, depending on business unit. There was a high level of blend per role. And where it was actually fully integrated, it was very targeted and very focused. This Sunday just gone, I had a chance to have a look at the Sunday Times Best Companies to Work For results. And I noticed that in those, that talent management was pretty well part of every single organisation. But very few of them explained precisely what they meant by it. I picked up that Kiln, which is an insurance underwriter company, explained that as being themed management development, which had executive support in terms of bringing people through the organisation and retaining their top managers. I spotted also that Marathon Oil picked up on the fact that very much their issue of the moment was team building, and that therefore their talent management was really on helping people to be good team leaders. So that, again, identifying the precise use of a particular approach, then deciding what the budget can afford in terms of method and methodology, that seems to be the trend. But it was interesting to go through those Sunday Times results. And if anybody has got the Sunday Times paper and hasn't reached that section yet, I suggest have a quick look before it goes in the bin. There's some interesting stuff in there.
Recycling, I think you mean.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So I guess when the CLPD talk about L&D being in that transition between transactional delivery focused work towards the transformational organisational development challenge, we've still got quite a fair way to go with that, haven't we?
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on and talk about how we do more with less. There's an interesting quote here, again from the CIPD Talent Survey 2011. It's a truism that organisations will expect people to do more with less, but what we shouldn't expect is for them to want to do more with less learning and talent development, which I think is a very good point. Let's look at some of the research. So CIPD, organisations have reduced their use of externally provided options like workshops and events by 34%. Interestingly enough, if you look at the good practice reports, in-house instruction has decreased by 12% and support for outsourced training and events is up by 12%. So there's a bit of a contrast there. What's might be happening is that to start with, people cut down on outsourcing their training because going through a very tough time economically, and then started to realise, well, actually, we kind of need those things. So let's do it again. So that might account for the good practice report, which is slightly newer. In terms of the ASTD, similar. 76% of learning executives anticipate that expenditure on external services will moderately increase. So it's interesting there. It's difficult to really work out what's going on. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on this, Emma, Neville.
Interesting line of
I think it is fascinating that in the world of learning and development, we have to distinguish quite often between a genuine trend and good intent. And when people are completing research, intent often becomes reality.
Webinar is Mildred.
And hello, Mildred. And in terms of the reality of the situation, the ASTD State of the Industry report is very interesting in that it shows up that since 2006 to 2010, very little has actually changed in terms of the average annual expenditure given the thing. The percentage of pay stayed the same.
During the recession.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which is interesting. The amount or the average it's costing using an integrated approach and what's free. And that's
On the job level and the sort of job that people do as well, in terms of whether you use in-house
STD survey.
survey. And this is all around effectiveness of L&D practices, which is quite interesting. It's something new for this drawing tools out here for a second.